Thank you for tuning in to MacroView Television, and this is the Taiwan Outlook. I'm your program host, Raymond Wu. On today's program, we will be discussing U.S.-Taiwan relations, and we're delighted to have a special guest who has had so far a very distinguished career in both academics and also in government service. We're delighted to have Dr. David Weifeng Huang, who's currently Associate Research Fellow and Professor at the academic Sinica, as well as National Taiwan University, but who was also the former Deputy Representative of Taiwan to Washington, D.C. Welcome and thank you to the program, David.
Thank you, Raymond, and the audience of the Taiwan Outlook.
Yes. Well, we're going to start off with a big question, David. Can you give us an overview of your assessment of the Obama administration's policy towards Taiwan?
Yes, I think despite much rhetoric about change during the election campaign, I think that the least likely to change is U.S. one-China policy. This is not because everybody is satisfied with one-China policy, but because there's no other better alternatives to preserve the U.S. interests in East Asia. What is one-China policy? According to the official line of the U.S. government, the U.S. one-China policy is based on free communication with China and Taiwan Relation Act established in 1979. On that basis, the U.S. does not recognize Taiwan or Republic of China as an independent sovereign state, nor does it recognize the PRC's claim the sovereignty over Taiwan. And U.S. insists that all the disputes between China and Taiwan must be resolved peacefully. And U.S. oppose unilateral change by either side of the Taiwan Strait. So, based on this framework, there are a lot of room to be maneuvered. So, I think the Obama administration is very, very pragmatic. Because it's very pragmatic, there will be some change in terms of operations of its policies, but not the basic principle. So we have to be very, very careful to observe the unfolding events, especially economic downturns now seems to be deteriorating, and which will create a lot of weak states, even failed states, and there will be a lot of change of the balance of power in East Asia or in everywhere. And we have to be very, very cautious whether the U.S. will assess the current policies. But I think the current Obama administration is preoccupied with the so-called domestic economic problem. They have the Obama administration must prevent economic slide down further. What happened is that in the foreign policies, U.S. government also encountered a lot of a problem. Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and North Korea. So I think in the short term, there's very, very little chance that the Obama administration will change its one-China policy, especially policy toward Taiwan. This is the general outlook.
And David, we all know that one thing about the new national security team in Washington, D.C. under President Obama is that these are some of the people who are most knowledgeable about Asian and also China affairs. Maybe not the Secretary of State, Mrs. Clinton, but you look at the Deputy Secretary of State, James Steinberger, and also the Senior Director of Asian Affairs at the White House's National Security Council, Jeff Bader, and also the Assistant Secretary of Defense, Campbell. These are people who know Asian affairs, know China affairs, very well. And how would you expect that under these people, on the operational side, how would they steer U.S. Taiwan relations in the next 4 years or possibly 8 years?
Well, I think currently it's very obvious the U.S. preoccupied with other foreign urgent issues like, as I said, Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. they would like to see that the cross relations between China and Taiwan moving in the more constructive dialogue directions. At the same time, of course, they have to readjust its emphasis toward Asia. That's why Mrs. Clinton chose his first foreign visit to East Asia, in accordance with the closeness with the United States. First visit Japan as an ally, Indonesia, Korea, and last China.
Yes.
But at the same time, you will see that now currently the UK Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, is visiting Washington, D.C. It's very clear. The current administration carefully balanced the East Asia's emphasis of East Asia as well as Europe. At the same time of the Mrs. Clinton visit of East Asia, you witness that the Vice President Joe Biden also visited Europe. So this is a very, very dedicated diplomacy. So I think this team is very, very experienced. And in terms of the so-called East Asia experts now occupying a very, very important position in the national security team under Obama administration, I think they are really in good hands. And what we want to see is that whether this team, having understood all the details of the cross relations of the East Asias, will also try to find some substantial items to improve the U.S. and Taiwan relations, while at the same time also improve the U.S. and China relations. And this is, I think that the pragmatism is what defined the Obama administrations. And Obama administration also very carefully articulate they want to listen more to his allies' demand, rather than simply preach the U.S. requests and policies. Yeah. So this is a very, very subtle change. And so I think in the future you'll see that the U.S. will probably try to do some subtle operations under the table. Currently, they are quite relaxed of the rapprochement between the China and Taiwan. They would like to see the constructive dialogue continue between China and Taiwan, and they're really relaxed. While at the same time, they also cautiously observe whether the direction is moving toward what U.S. want or not. And so we should not preclude that the U.S. administration under Obama will not change anything in terms of operations. On the other hand, we have to be very, very cautious whether when the unfolding event will force the current Obama administration to rethink, just like in 1994, the Clinton administration reviewed the Taiwan policies. But at this moment, I don't see this sign. And we cannot preclude in the future that as the cross relations move toward a certain point, and you cannot preclude that the United States will not review its current policies.
Okay. There were two things, David, in your earlier conversation that particularly stood out in your assessment about the U.S. Asian policy or China policy under President Obama. One thing is balance. You mentioned about whether to keep East Asia, the Europe balanced, Middle East and South Asia balanced, and for example, Northeast Asia, you have the problem with North Korea. How is that going to be reconciled in terms of importance with the situation, for example, in Afghanistan? So you mentioned the first aspect that is important under President Obama is balance, and the second issue is given the global financial downturn, economics. Certainly will be a very important part of U.S. relations with a number of different countries, including China, including the European Union, including those with Taiwan as well. And also you mentioned the fact that these are, the current national security makeup, is very much reflective of some of the leading Asian minds or China minds, in Washington, D.C., in the U.S. And these are people who know how to balance and how to emphasize the economics as well as the politics and military aspects and things. So in the sense, you also left a question open, which is you don't rule out the possibility that maybe in the foreseeable future, not right away, because we need to deal with the global economic situation first, but in the foreseeable future, there might be a review of U.S.-China policy or U.S. cross-strait policy, U.S.-Taiwan policy. How do you think, if at the time when the review does come, what are the likely tendencies for U.S. policy to change or evolve under President Obama?
Well, I think if the current rapprochement between China and Taiwan continue, which moving into a more close economic type, which is good from the U.S. business perspective.
Yes.
And from the U.S. government perspective, as long as there's a peaceful relations between China and Taiwan, that's
no
fine.
Tension.
No tensions, that's fine. But the problem here is that when Taiwan's participation in international organization will require the final approval of the Beijing's, or the patterns of Taiwan's participation in an international organization imply the Taiwan sovereignties belong to PRC, then that is currently inconsistent with the U.S. one China policies. To that extent, the United States will have to first accept the fact and then review what to do next.
Yeah, what needs to be responded.
So this is the thing that we cannot preclude. So we have to be very careful when we try to pursue the international participation. We should not let Beijing set the patterns. We should participate by all means, with all forms, but without any patterns that would imply the PRC sovereignties over Taiwan, which is inconsistent with U.S. policies. We have to be very, very careful about that.
Well, thank you, David. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back to the Taiwan Outlook, and we'll continue this conversation on U.S.-China-Taiwan relations with Dr. David Huang. We'll be right back.